Right. Good morning, students. I want to welcome you to GST111 class. The title of this course is Communication in English. And of course, my name is Dr. Emmanuel Adegbenro. For the first lecture, I'll be taking the topic, the nature and function of language. You are welcome. Now let's talk about language. I know that majority of us speak language, but it's possible we don't know what language actually means. Some of us have our languages. Some of you speak English. Some of you speak Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, and all other languages. But what is language? Well, let's talk about the history of language. Language is as old as man. And of course, it is the only peculiarity of man. It is peculiar to man. It is what distinguishes man from all other animals. Animals don't speak a language, but humans speak a language. And so it is a means of interaction among members of a community. And it is the most intimate possession of man. Language can be described as the basis of all creative thoughts. The basis of all creative thoughts. And so it is the most important form of communication employed by man. Although there are other forms of communication. We have the sign language, the braille, and so on and so forth. But the most important form of communication that man has ever employed is that of language. Now, we can look at language from 2 points of view. First of all, from sociological point of view. From that point of view, they see language as a means of socialization or interaction. It is through the vehicle of language that you socialize or that you can interact freely, maybe in the family, your friends, maybe with your friends, in the church, in the mosque, even in the school. We use language when we greet each other, when we communicate in one way or the other, to socialize. So that means of socialization is what is called language, as viewed by the sociological school of thought. Then we can also see language from the linguist point of view. And they describe language as a systematic body of rules or system of arbitrary symbols employed in the process of communication. We call language a system of arbitrary symbols. Language is arbitrary. What it means is that it is randomly, selected or predicted. Everything about language is arbitrary. It is, based on convention, a kind of agreement by the speakers. For example, if we say CAT, will be known as cat and not sat, but it will be known as cat, and it will mean, a domestic animal that mews. It is arbitrary. It is conventional. The language speakers have come to terms to agree that that is what it means. So that is part of the arbitrariness of language. The symbols are also arbitrary. Look at your A, B, C to Z in English language or the alphabet of some other languages. They are arbitrarily selected and agreed upon by the speaker of that particular language. So that is the meaning of language from the linguist point of view. Now let's talk about the components of language. Components of language also means branches of language or aspects of language. And here I have about 6 components. We have the phonology and phonetics, phonology or phonetics. That is the aspect of language that has to do with sound system, production of sound, the organs of speech that are involved in the production of sound, your tongue, your lips, your larynx, the esophagus, the nostrils, the teeth, the palate, alveolar, and all the rest. All organs of speech that are involved in the production of speech, even the lungs from where the hair that empowers us to be able to speak emanate from. Phonetics and phonology is an embodiment of all of these things. And then the sound production itself, that is the aspect, that is one component of language. Then we also have the component that is known as morphology. Morphology has to do with word formation, how words are formed in language. When I combine teach plus ER, for example, I have teacher. Teacher. Teacher is a composition of 2 morphemes. Morphemes are smallest units that are meaningful in language. Teach is a morpheme, ER is a morpheme. So this process of combining 2 morphemes together to form, a word, or as the case may be, is what is known as morphology. A word can comprise of many morphemes, like you can have in illegality. Illegality, we discover that the word legal is, the base, is in the middle, is the original word. When we form, which is also an adjective, something legal is, when you say something is legal, it's lawful, it's an adjective. So, but we can form the opposite of that word by adding IL. So you now have illegal. Then if you now want to form a noun out of the word, you say you now have ity in front. Then you now have what we call illegality. You see, there are 3 morphemes here. So the process of joining one morpheme to the other one to form a new word is what we call morphology. It's an aspect of language. Then we have that aspect that we call lexis. Lexis. Lexis means the word stock of a language. The word stock of a language. All the words that are, compiled in the dictionary of a language are the lexis of that particular language. Starting from the smallest one, particle words like a, and, they, go, come, talking about the noun words the verbs, the adjectives, the adverbs, pronouns, prepositions, adverb, conjunctions, and all the rest. You have 8 parts of speech according to the traditional grammar. So all the words, name of something, you know, description of something, table, chair, go, come, and all the rest are lexes. They are lexical items. Lexical items, words, all the vocabulary that exist in a particular language are the lexes of that particular language. So lexis itself is an aspect of language. Then we also have what we call centers. Center has to do with the structure of a language, the grammar of a language, how words are combined with one or two other words to form a structure. A structure can start from a phrase to a clause and then to a sentence and of course to a larger text, paragraphs and text. So this is what we call centers. Centers, structural composition of a particular language. Then we also have the aspect that is called semantics. Semantics is another component of language. Semantics is the aspect of language that borders on meaning, meaning of words, meaning of phrases, meaning of sentences, meaning in general. That is the aspect of language that is called semantics. Then we also have stylistics. Stylistics has to do with the social meaning, and social or in particular situation, social meaning. So that is another aspect of language. Now we will move on to the features of human language. Features of human language. What are the features of human language? One, language is unique. It is unique. I mean, there is not no other thing with which we communicate that is as unique as language. If you use sign may not be unique. You understand? When you beckon to somebody, although the person will come, but in some other uh, culture, beckoning may mean a different thing. Biting of tongue, mean different things to different people. But for language, when you say come in that language is come. Go is go. So, and of course, language is an organized code. It has organized codes. The codes in language are organized from the alphabet to words to sentences, clauses, and all the rest. They are organized. The sound itself is organized. When I say parts, you have P, you have A, you have T. You discover that this is organized for making meaning. It's also a network of systems. Network of system within system. That is what we mean. You have words in phrases, phrases are in clauses, clauses are in sentences, sentences in a paragraph, paragraphs in a text. These are systems. These are network of systems. You understand? And then you have network of sound system. Network of sound system. You have different sounds coming, to feature, in a particular word. Look at that word itself, word. W, D. So this is a network of systems. And then we say language is arbitrary. We have mentioned that before. And I've explained a little about what we mean by arbitrariness. That is random selection. It is not natural. You understand? Language itself The selections that we do in language is not natural. It is as agreed upon by convention, by the people using that language. So, and the language is conventional. It is as agreed upon by the people that use that language. And it is transmitted naturally. We discover that all of us just wake up and we begin to speak a language. How did we acquire the language? We acquire it naturally, only by observing, by listening, by interacting with people in a language community. We begin to speak it. Not that you are consciously taught how to speak the language, but it was transmitted to you naturally, handed down to you, maybe from parents, from relatives and people that you live with, in the community. And then language is also creative. It's creative. With language, we can create things. Every creative thought of man begins with language. Our creative resource is hinged on the power of language. Even when we think about it, it is through language that we think about whatever we are thinking about. So that's why we say language is creative and it is dynamic. Language also changes. It's not static. Recently, I just discovered that they said they have added one new word to the dictionary, and that word is from the Yoruba origin. That is phannemorous. What it means is that in some years back, in the dictionary of English, you wouldn't see a word like phannemorous. Phannemorous is from the Yoruba word phanemora, phannemorous. So you cannot have it in English, which means something attractive. So that is the dynamism of language. Language is dynamic. It changes. It changes in terms of meaning, in terms of usage, and so on and so forth. Now we can move on to functions of language. The functions of language. Language performs different functions, and some of the functions will be briefly explained here. One of the functions is that it is informative. You know, language is used as a means of passing information from one person to the other. It is also instrumental. That is to say, it is used, you know, as an instrument in the hand of government, in the hand of politician, instrument in an establishment to pass out uh, uh, edits, laws, and so on and so forth. The language is also regulatory. With the function of language as being regulatory, we can control, the behavior of man generally through language. Then language is interaction. There's no other way through which we can interact apart from language. When you can imagine a word without language, you can imagine how friendship will be like, how community will be like, how a society will be like without language, which is a major means of interaction. And then we said language is heuristic. Language is heuristic in nature. What do we mean by being heuristic? It is heuristic because it is uh, the role of language to facilitate efficient problem solving and decision making instrument. That is the function of language as heuristic function when it is used to facilitate efficient problem solving, decision making in a society. That is a heuristic function of language. And of course, language also performs imaginative function. It is through language that you can think and think very deeply. And there is nothing we do that does not, first of all, you know, emerges out of imagination. We first of all imagine, and it is through language that we can perform that imaginative function. Now, I will take you to language skills. There are four language skills that we have. Number one is listening skill. Then we have speaking skill. We also have what we call reading skill. And we have writing skill. Listening skill, speaking skill, reading skill, and then writing skill. These are the four basic language skills that anybody must learn. If anyone is learning a language, he must learn these four basic skills. And these four basic skills of language can be divided broadly into two. We have the receptive skill and then the productive skill. The receptive skill is a form of input, what you receive, you know, what you receive. Of course, you usually receive from someone else. And then the productive skill is what you produce in form of output. When you bring out an output, is for the purpose of others. You take, you receive from others, whereas you also produce for other people's advantages. So these are the two broad divisions of language skills. Now, the receptive skills are two, just like the productive skills are also two. The receptive skills includes listening and reading. Listening and reading. You know, when you listen, I mean, you must have been listening to somebody talk or some other person talk to you, and you receive through your ear. When you listen, you receive through the hair. You take in information. So the receptive skill is the skill through which information is absorbed, is taken in, you know. So and there are two ways information can be absorbed when you listen, and the other one is through reading. Definitely you read what other people have written. You listen to what other people are saying. This is the receptive skill that we are talking about. So someone must learn to listen in order to be able to get adequate information. And then when you also read, you'll be able to get adequate information. Those two things are very, very essential if somebody wants to receive information. You listen or you read. That's why what you are going to be doing in your classes, we center around these two language skills. In the class, you must learn to listen to your lecturer, you know, keenly. And you will also need to read. You read text, you read your notes to be able to gather information. So don't take this language skill for granted. It is what will determine whether you will perform well or not at the end of the day. Because there'll be a time when you'll be asked to also practicalize what we call the productive skill. And the productive skill is, you know, for you to now produce what you have gathered, to take out of those things that you have already taken in, and then, you know, bring them out as if in form of an output. That is the productive skill. And it involves writing and speaking. Writing and speaking. When you write for others, you are producing. When you speak for others to hear, you are also producing. So essentially, these four language skills are very, very important, not only in the language class, but in all situations, whether listening at home to your parents giving you instruction, whether you are in the church or mosque, I mean, attending the service where there is a sermon going on, whether you are in the community, even while passing by on the road. The two language skills, I mean, the two broad language skills must come to play. You must well be able to receive and be able to produce. Writing and speaking constitute the productive skills. So these are the language skills divided into two broad categories, receptive and productive. Now, we can now talk about types of listening. We really want to talk about listening because it is very, very important. Listening has two types. Two types. When you listen, there are two essential reasons why someone may listen. Number one, we call one effective listening. Effective listening. And then, of course, effective listening is also called active listening, or what we call formal listening. And then we also have the other type of listening, which is passive listening or social listening, or otherwise known as informal listening. Now, effective listening is when you listen with the aim of being able to reproduce what you have heard or what you have listened to. That is effective listening. You are listening to piece of information being relayed to you with the purpose of being able to reproduce what you have listened to. That is effective listening, or otherwise known as active listening or formal listening. And where will you usually do that? You will need that essentially in your classes as you begin to attend your lectures. You will practice what they call effective listening because when the teacher is teaching you, you're expected to be able to say, you know, everything that he has said, most essential details of what he has said, even after he has left the class. So you will now need to lay your ears to the ground very well without allowing any uh, interruption or anything uh, to carry you away from the class, without allowing any disturbance. You will not sit in a place where there is noise, where someone is ready to distract your attention from the class before you can do effective listening. You will need to concentrate and focus your attention on the teacher. And you are listening effectively when you are also taking down notes. When you are taking down notes, you will not be one of those students that will sit at the back and then just playing away the time, or some will even be uh, playing with their phone, watching different films on their phone, and doing some other uh, very unnecessary things on their phone. That will not be a way to practice effective listening. Because if you are in a formal situation, a formal situation demands a formal listening. Now, you have passive listening, and there are times you do passive listening. The purpose is not for you to be able to reproduce what has been said. You only listen for the sake of it. Maybe just to be able to entertain yourself, and then whatever you have listened to end there at that point in time. That kind of listening is called social listening or informal listening. Sometimes when you watch a movie in your house, you are doing passive listening or social listening. You may not be able to tell us hook, line, and sinker in detail everything that you have heard, or when you are passing by on the road and there are some information filtering into your ear. You are doing passive listening because the intention is not for you to be able to reproduce what you have heard, but essentially listening in the classroom as you are going to start doing enjoying your lecture, you must do effective listening. So let's talk about um, elements um, elements of listening. Elements of listening, and there are three. There are three elements of listening. Three things are involved when we say we listen. There is what we call the speaker, and then there is the message that the speaker is relaying or sending out, and then there is the hearer. So the three uh, entities interact. One depends on the other. How effective one is depends on the other one. The speaker is at the head of the element of listening, but information emanates from the speaker. So, how well the speaker is able to relay the information will determine how the hearer will receive the information. What the speaker is relaying out in form of information is called the message. It's called the message. When the message is understood by the hearer, it means there is what we call fidelity of fidelity of message. It means there is no noise coming in between. There's no distortion of that message. The message is very clear and pure. So we have three elements of listening: speaker, message, and then hearer. The three of them interact very well. They interact. Out of the three elements, speaker is woman, hearer is woman. But message is, you know, is in form of information. It's a piece of information, you know. And speaker is something that is concrete. You can see the speaker, even though not every time, because sometimes even if it is not woman, it could be woman speaking through the machine, through the loudspeaker, through the microphone, through the radio, through the television, you know. But whichever way, a woman is behind it all. Then hearer is also human. But the message is the information which cannot be seen but can only be heard by the sense of hearing. Now, we will be treating about the last segment in this, about the penultimate segment in this lecture. Rules guiding effective speaking. Rules guiding effective speaking. Now, you do not try to grasp everything said by the teacher. You do not try to grasp everything said by the teacher. If you want to grasp everything said by the teacher, you will end up at getting nothing. But the teachers release a lot of information. Some are essential, some are not essential. So as a student, you must learn only to take note of essential details that is being released by the teacher. So that is one of the things you must learn. Number two, pay attention to teachers' opinion. Don't concentrate on your own opinion. Some of us we have formed our opinion before we get to the class. Maybe opinion that we have learned from our former school, from our uh, from our interaction with other people outside the classroom. No, pay attention to teachers' opinion. The teacher's opinion may nullify the opinion that you have already had about that particular information. But the teacher's opinion will be most important to you in the class. So be quick to discover essential details. Like I've said before, when the teacher is releasing information, there are essential details and there are some non-essential details. So you have to be able to read between the lines and be able to sieve the substance from the chaff. Essential details are very important for you to take note of. Do not attempt to write everything said by the teacher. I mean, we are just emphasizing almost the same thing. I mean, taking down notes, like I've told you before, is always good for you to. One of the ways you can prove that you are doing effective listening in the class is by taking that note. And so, do not attempt to write everything said by the teacher. At the end of the day, you will succeed in not getting anything down. But when you listen to the essential details, take note of them, and that's what we call jotting. Now, sieve what you hear so that you'll be able to know which one is important and which one is not important. Then you must also overcome your personal deficiencies. For example, some of us have a hearing problem. Move closer to the teacher. Don't sit at the back of the class. Some of us have problem with our height. We don't see far distances. It is not your type that will sit at the back. You sit very close to the teacher. Some of us are easily distracted by friends. If you know your friends will distract your attention in the class, jettison them. Look for somewhere where no friend will disturb you. Then you should avoid disturbance. When anyone is trying to disturb you, move away from him. And then your mind, your state of mind is very important too in the class. You must avoid a roaming mind or thinking about any other thing. Let your mind concentrate on what the teacher is teaching you in that particular time. So now, when you do effective listening, there are advantages, you know, that you are going to learn from this. Number one, it will expand your knowledge. Things that you never knew before, you begin to know them. Your knowledge will increase. There's no doubt about that. So when you do effective listening, you gain new insight, new knowledge, either into that topic or several other things that the teachers will teach you. Then it will develop your vocabulary. You're going to learn new vocabularies. You will add more vocabulary to your vocabulary level. I mean, teachers will definitely use some words that you have not heard before. You heard them up, you take note of them, take note of the meaning, you take note of the way you use the word, you take notes of the pronunciation, you take note of the spelling of that particular word, especially when you get back home and you open your dictionary and you learn more about that new word. Then you'll be acquiring new vocabularies more and more. And then when you do effective listening, it will help you correct your wrong pronunciations. Maybe there is a word you have been pronouncing wrongly before. Now, when the teacher is pronouncing it in the class correctly, you will learn the way to pronounce the word. And then it will help you to understand the lecture better when you do effective listening. Paying attention in the class will help you to understand that lecture better, unlike when you don't do effective listening. And effective listening will also help you understand the meaning of words. We have said that before. And it will help you contribute meaningfully to the lecture. And the lecturer asks you to make contribution even in the course of lecture or to ask questions. You'll be able to ask profound questions and contribute meaningfully because that effective listening has aided your in-depth understanding, has broadened your mind and you'll be able to contribute meaningfully to that lecture. And then, of course, it will help you save time. Effective listening helps the student save time in the class. Because what you should learn within 30 minutes by doing effective listening. If you do not do effective listening, you find yourself coming back to read time again and again, going back home to read and read and read and read again. But within the 1 hour that the teacher will teach you, or 2 hours, if you do effective listening, you can grasp whatever I want to teach you or the teacher want to teach you within a short time. And that will be more helpful than 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 doing kind of informal listening, passive listening. So, boys and girls, this is the end of the first lecture in GST 111. Other lecturers will come in from week after week. I want to wish you best of luck and a happy stay at Olabisi Onabanjo University. Thank you.